We are live with Jerry Gatto. I always want to say your full first name.
Gennaro
Gatto. We are live with Gennaro Gatto.
Is that Italian?
Absolutely.
Is that yeah? Would that be Italian? Would that be? I'm not sure. Could Gennaro be Italian? And Nicholas Alexander Karadza. So we were just talking about actually before we talk about the Planning Act. When you go up skiing, are you like racing down the hills with your kids?
Absolutely.
You still race down the
Are
hills?
you kidding? I can barely go down the hill.
Oh, okay, no, but when last time I saw you, it looked like I didn't go up with you, and it looked like you were just bombing down the hill.
He races to the lodge, I think.
My 9-year-old makes fun of me. He goes up and down twice before I get down.
Yeah, but you're still doing great. You're bombing down those hills. I feel like I saw you going down.
Your eye. You need to check your eyes.
We already know they're not very good.
Yeah. No, my eyes are amazing. My eyes are perfect. My eyes are perfect. I got glasses and I've never needed. I don't know what happened. I got them. I've never used them one time. I just squint more.
If you think you saw me bombing down, get your eyes checked quick.
You know what? Listen, when we went skiing with you and your family and beautiful family and kids, by the way, it was amazing. But then you had another friend who's a lawyer. Like when you hang out, there's all these lawyers around, you go to the ski club.
He's a good skier.
You know how it feels like when there's a lot of lawyers around you, you just get nervous.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
Why are all these people around me telling me this stuff? Yeah. So, yeah, no, you're a good skier. I think you're downplaying it. What do we need to get into with this Planning Act? What are you seeing out there?
Well, Planning Act, I mean, it's still a prevalent problem in Ontario, and you always have to be careful if you own a piece of property that's next door. You have to ensure that you don't have both properties in the same name. So if Tom and Nick buy property A, either Tom or Nick can buy property B, but you can't put Tom and Nick on property B because there is a possibility of those two titles merging, which will result in you having to go to the Committee of Adjustment and spending a whack of money to get those two properties severed, even though originally they were two separate properties.
And I know that, and it always seems outrageous to me. But so, what determines whether or not they merge?
If they're part of a whole lot. So in new subdivisions, for example, now they've got subdivision laws and they put whole lots in a subdivision. It doesn't matter. You can buy the abutting property. But in older properties where they severed them off and they were part lots on a plan of subdivision, there's a possibility of severing. So I always say to clients, and I just recently had one where the client called me. He lives in one property, he's buying property B. And I checked to make sure, and I said, "Yeah, you got to keep them separate." And sometimes it affects the mortgage.
But what do you mean keep them separate? So he has to close it with a different name?
Yeah, you have to. Well, so the rule is as long as the names are not identical.
Yeah.
So going back to my example, you and Nick buy property A. You and Nick cannot buy property B. You have to keep it separate. So you could add Carol to property B. You could put Tom, Nick, and Carol. Mm-hmm. You could put Tom alone.
Corporate name.
Nick, a corporate name. Corporate name, Tom and Nick. There has to be some distinction. There was lawyers at one point that were putting, for example, Nick and Tom would buy property A, and then in property B, they'd put your full legal name.
Yeah, does that work? I was just going to ask.
That doesn't work.
Why is the law so messed up?
Now,
so what is that the notary example? We were saying somebody used a notary to close on a property.
Well, that was right now. I've got a situation where the property was purchased shortly after the Planning Act was enacted, and the clients were used notary public. Their parents purchased it, and corporation owned piece of property and built 2 apartment buildings and sold property A to one party, property B to the other party without getting severance. And it's continued that way because it's moved to the children and nobody ever bothered to do any searches because, somebody comes in and says, "Hey, Jerry, I want to just give this to my 2 sons." So typically, not that it's right, but lots of lawyers don't bother looking at a search. I mean, it's okay. If your father owned it and it was his name, I'll just put it into your name. But we've got a huge Planning Act problem.
So we're paying lawyers. Some lawyers, we're paying them to do things and they don't do them?
No, it's not that. But no.
Well, now Jerry's defending the legal system. I get it. No, but wait, on that property example. So 2 apartment buildings are purchased by the exact same name, I assume.
No, one person owned both apartment buildings and they sold it without getting severance.
Okay, but that's a different example.
That's a different example.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So those 2 properties now, when they were transferred, those transfers are invalid. They're null and void. So those people that own those apartment buildings legally do not own those apartment buildings, and they don't have the right to sell them.
So the people that previously owned it are the last rightful owners?
Correct.
Come on.
Honest to God.
But they've been paying a mortgage on these properties for maybe 20 years.
Now, you can fix it, but it's expensive. You got to go to court. You got to get.
Is this what title insurance would cover?
No, title insurance doesn't cover that.
Title insurance doesn't cover this?
No, the title insurance doesn't cover that. The other example, which is more problematic, is you own 22 Main Street and you want to buy 24 Main Street. If you buy both, if you own 22 as Nick and Tom Carazza, and you buy 24 as Nick and Tom Carazza, there is a possibility, there are some exceptions, but there's a possibility that those two titles will merge and you will not be able to sell 22 by itself or 24 by itself.
When does it merge? Somehow in the land registry office?
No. When your lawyer goes to look at title and he sees that.
But who merged it? Like, to me, there's a database entry.
It merges by the Planning Act.
It merges by law.
By law. The Planning Act says those two properties merge. Now, there's a movement.
Is this lawyers just creating more legal work?
No, it's
because, this just sounds like bullshitty to me.
It is. And everybody agrees. And pre-COVID, I had heard that the Ontario government there was a movement within legislation to change the bylaw, to change that law, because that's not what it was intended for. The Planning Act was intended for preventing Nick from owning 100 acres and going, here, Tom, I'll give you this little piece. Mike, I'll give you that little piece. JP, I'll give you that little piece. So the government said, wait a minute, we don't want the owner of that 100 acres deciding how to divvy up the property. And, sometimes you go into older areas of Ontario, some older properties, and you'll see a 2-acre property right beside a lot that's 50 by 100. Mm-hmm. That was done pre-Planning Act. So when the government passed the Planning Act...
In what year did they pass the
I forget the year it was passed.
Ballpark.
In the 70s sometime.
Okay.
So maybe even in the 60s. But when they passed it, it was intended to prevent people from doing that. So they said, you know what?
I don't even understand how it does that.
Well, because now if I own 100 acres, I can't piece off a little bit of my property.
They're just going to roll it back into what you own.
You've got...
Because if I piece it off, I'm giving it in my own name?
No, if I piece off property A to Tom, so I own it. Jerry owns 100 acres, and I go, Nick, here's a little piece. I'm going to give you 2 acres. Tom,
but the ownership changed into his name.
Yes, legally.
Okay.
But with the Planning Act, you have to go get the severance done properly.
Yes, but the Planning Act says that transfer is invalid. Even though we've signed all the papers and we've registered it, the Planning Act says...
You have to go get a proper severance.
You have to go to the Committee of Adjustments, get a proper severance, and they want to keep some consistency. So I can't make a lot 100 by 200, the lot beside it 50 by 100.
Okay. So those areas, there's some areas of Hamilton where
I was crossing stories again because I was just thinking it's you closing in your name on this other lot and they merge back together or something. No, I'm all confused. It's okay. I think I'm straight now.
Yeah, you can't have two beside each other in exactly the same name. So as a lawyer, one of the things that we do when we do our searches, right, we check the Planning Act. We make sure that there's no contravention.
But if you chop off a piece, I understand.
That's what he's saying. If you can't chop off the piece because it would be in your name, means it goes back to the regular piece. You have to go to the Committee of Adjustments to chop it off properly instead of you just doing it by yourself.
Okay, so you can't chop up your own 100 acres
because they'll just put it back into
all in your name.
Yeah. So if you went with a piece of spray paint,
I'm
and said,
slow,
okay,
Jerry. I get there though. I'm slow. I get there. And can never be a lawyer. See that?
And the idea is to
you
keep
laughed in agreement on that, eh? You didn't come back to my defense. You didn't say, no, Tom, you could be anything you want to be. You laughed and said, I knew that already.
You're a fantastic real estate agent. You want to be a lawyer.
You're a real estate agent.
Real estate agent. Broker. You're a broker of record.
Oh my God. Stop.
But anyway, the Planning Act, the intention was good. So the intention is that you don't have areas in a municipality
that are a mess,
it's a mess, and you got a big piece.
We've all seen those areas, downtown Toronto, downtown Hamilton.
They're all there, right? So the idea was
the mechanic shop next to the residential house.
That's what I was going to say. The lumber yard next to our student
rental has a lumber yard.
We want to keep some consistency with the property so that everybody is, there's some planning done.
So that was to protect everyone, that if you pieced off a piece of your own land, but it was still under your name, it merged back together because the severance wasn't done properly.
Correct.
But now it's coming back to bite people in the ass, because if they're closing on a completely different piece of land,
yes,
that has been properly severed?
No, it has not been properly severed.
That is not. And it's still the zoning, which is saying, it's two people with the same name, two things with the same name, it merges back together.
No, but hold on. These ones have probably been properly severed, because if I have two lots that I bought next door to each other and they were part of a bigger lot when they were severed, it's combining.
They may not have been. So pre-planning act.
Because how could they sell them then?
Well, because pre-planning act,
they could sell them,
right?
Oh, wow.
So if you had something in the family for 50 years, and now you're kind of reselling, and somebody buys both, closes on both in the same name, thinks they have two lots, but it gets merged back together underneath the planning act. See that, Jerry?
That's right.
Got it.
Absolutely. And if I own a property and I've never owned any adjoining property, I can continue selling that, no problem. The problem becomes if I own property A and I want to buy my neighbor's property, and I end up buying my neighbor's property and the title is exactly the same, the properties could merge.
So how do they know whether they need to worry about that or not? Is there something you can look up at the land registry office?
Absolutely. Yeah, we look. We look, and if it's a whole lot in a plan of subdivision, you don't have to worry about that, because to your point, it's already received its severance, so you're good. So what?
But the alternative is what would you see if it wasn't that?
Well, you would see that it's not on a plan of subdivision. It's a part lot.
Oh, it's a part lot.
It's a part lot, and there's a possibility
so you basically don't want a part lot.
No, you don't want to. I mean, and it's fine if you're not buying it's not fine if you're not buying the property next door.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I was gonna say you do. You want everything.
Yeah. Okay.
You want. I mean, you're okay to buy it. It's just and the problem. Like I had one just recently where, the individual wanted to buy, and the problem is that he was having trouble getting financing unless he kept it in his name and his spouse's name. So we had the assistance of Butler, that we were able to add a corporation to that title, kept the two people on, and added the corporation, which kept it from merging.
So you used a corporation to change the name so it's not exact.
It's not exact. As long as it's not exact, as long as...
I can't believe you deal with this stuff.
Yeah, you deal. Well, that's what the title says.
I don't believe anyone has to deal with that.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
don't
worry, the government's looking into it, so that means within 10 years. They might have looked into it. They might be at step 2.
Don't worry, guys. The government, anyone listening, don't worry. The government is looking into this situation. By 2045, we will have an update.
Well, because it wasn't intended to pick up that scenario. That's not what the intention was. But unfortunately,
the intention of us coming off the gold standard was supposed to be temporary, Jerry, in 1971. Where how many years later, temporary still going?
Yeah.
Okay, what a mess.
It is a mess. It's a mess. And any lawyer you talk to says it's a mess, because that's not what it was the intention, but unfortunately, that's what happens. And as a lawyer, sometimes we've had clients walk in, say, oh, you know what, my daughter, I'm going to transfer the piece next door to my daughter and her husband. And no problem, it's a simple transfer, right? You better check the abutting properties, because if the daughter and the husband own the property next door, you're inadvertently causing yourself to call Law Pro and claim negligence because you didn't check that property next door.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, you have to be very careful. The Planning Act
So you check this stuff, and I just can't believe that. I always thought when you pay for title insurance, all of this stuff, everything's covered.
It doesn't cover the Planning Act.
What else does title insurance not cover?
Well, title insurance doesn't cover work orders if you're aware of them. So if I buy a property and in the offer it says that we understand that there's a work order, title insurance doesn't cover that.
A work order example would be city has come by
a deck was built without proper
Incorrectly, yeah.
permits, and I buy, and you say, hey, I say, Tom, you want to buy my property? By the way, there's a work order against my.
Okay, what else does title insurance not cover?
What else doesn't it? What it doesn't cover?
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm getting screwed, Jerry.
Well, no, I mean title insurance. I mean the main thing with title insurance fraud, right? I mean that's their main sell, right? Their main sell.
Somebody's
is
selling something they don't actually own. And have you seen examples of that?
I personally have not seen any.
Okay,
I've seen
Correct. A lot of insurance people are
Great.
buying.
So we're
for
buying
no-
insurance for something that Jerry's never seen.
Well, no, but there's a lot of real estate fraud going on, and
What's an example of real estate fraud?
well, there was a perfect example, and unfortunately, a lady did not have title insurance, and she owned a property in Toronto, and I forget the bank. I forget who the lender was. Anyway, somebody went to a bank and said, hey, I'm Mrs. Smith. I want to put a mortgage on my property. Property was worth a couple $1 million. They're looking for a mortgage of $750,000, $800,000, way below.
Sure.
What do you call it? Loan
to value?
Loan to ratio or loan to value.
We like to say loan to value. You
loan
stick
to
with the
value.
legal stuff. We got the financing
loan
stuff.
to value. And I guess the appraiser just drove by the house, didn't bother to go in, and looked and said, oh, yeah, house is worth a couple $1 million. It's in a good area. Put a mortgage on. 4 months later, Toronto Dominion Bank, I think it was Toronto Dominion Bank, I think that's who it was, commenced legal proceedings against a lady because no mortgage payment had been made. Turns out that the people that put the mortgage on were fraudsters. Toronto Dominion Bank lent the money. Okay, a huge lawsuit occurred.
And title insurance covered it.
She didn't have title insurance.
Oh, sorry.
She didn't have
But
title
why
But
would-
that's after closing.
Yeah.
Title insurance would. I never thought title insurance would cover things after closing.
Oh yeah, that's what title insurance. So if
Oh my
you
God!
own a
All these
property-
years, Nick and I have not understood what we're
I
buying.
know.
You own a property 10 years, and 10 years from
Jerry,
now,
you definitely explained this differently 10 years ago.
I don't think I ever asked. I'm like, title insurance. I guess I got it. Okay, we just signed it.
Yeah,
It's a smart thing to get.
10 years down the road, somebody steals your ID and puts a mortgage on your property or sells it.
That's what title insurance covers?
Yes.
But
All
hold-
these years, I've thought title insurance was I buy something, and if it wasn't represented properly when I purchased it, like if the dimensions of the lot were off, I was lied to about the size of the lot or something like that, title insurance covers me. Or I'm buying from somebody who didn't really own it in a fraud situation at the point of purchase, at the time of purchase.
Yes.
Then it covers me for things like
Yes,
that.
but it also covers you if you become the victim of fraud.
Okay, but
that's
hold on.
interesting.
Let's play this out a little bit. So this lady, whoever the lender was, they commenced legal action against the true owner.
Yes, because
but they were defrauded, and she wasn't part of the fraud. So how could they?
Well, they
even,
used her ID.
they used her ID.
But how could they claim legal action? Like if they have no
they
proof.
started. She defended it, saying, I didn't borrow
'Cause they
money
didn't
out."
know.
Right. So
Okay.
so I get my hands on your passport.
Just thought, yeah.
I get my hands on your passport. I go to Toronto, go to somebody, and I understand for a couple of $100, I can get my picture put on somebody else's passport.
Okay. They did. Well, yeah, I get the answer. They didn't know.
Right, they didn't know. So they
I like
started.
Jerry's walking us through
Yeah.
how to make a fraudulent passport. Okay, take us right to conclusion on that.
What
What's
location
the
do you
address
go
that I
to?
go
Yeah.
to for fraudulent passports?
So anyway, with their hands on her ID, they put a mortgage on the property. Now the appraiser was at fault for not going into the house, because had the appraiser properly gone into the house, then
They
the
would have.
lady would have said, "Excuse me, what mortgage?"
Yeah.
But she won because
Well,
she
But
did.
she had to defend herself.
Believe it or not,
But then she would be entitled to her costs if
this
she won
was,
anyways.
this was the crazy part about it. When she first went to court, the first judge said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, you have to pay back the Toronto Dominion
Come
Bank."
on. No way. What judge in their right mind speaks those words?
It went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal said, we think our brother had a bad day, because it was the craziest decision and obviously got overturned. But, she spent a lot of money.
I can't believe we don't know originally what the bank was for sure. So let's not pick on any name.
No.
But the fact that the bank would even go down that path on something with
Correct.
lawyers going
Yep.
after a lady that might have been.
It was,
Oh,
and
my
and
gosh.
after that decision, that's why now if you own a property pre-title insurance, you can buy title insurance to protect you against the fraud. So if your parents have owned the property for 40 years pre the bringing in of title insurance, you can call a lawyer and say, hey, I'd like to buy title insurance just to give me that fraud protection.
I don't even know how much title insurance is. It just
Well,
always gets
title-
wrote.
I
feel
It's
like
always on the statement.
$250, $280. How
No,
much
no, it's a little bit more. It's in the $500
Is that
range.
how much it is?
It's always on the statement of
Inflation.
adjustments, and you just sign. And you just
how
think,
much is this?
Yeah,
Thing? Why am
yeah.
I buying this thing? You know what? You know when it really hit me is that when we were buying that place over in Croatia, Nick, and there was like they were going through the chain of ownership of this property, and the documents were starting to look all really deteriorated and stuff.
Yeah.
They were trying to find out if what we were buying was really owned by the previous person, and they were trying to do like a chain of custody.
it's
or
a
something.
over
And they
there it's a
literally
mess.
had old pieces of crumpled paper and different legal systems. So I always
Well,
thought
just
Canada's
think,
nice. You get this title insurance, and you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, title insurance as well, which a lot of clients don't understand, is when they refinance a property, you have to get title insurance to cover the lender. You don't have to get title insurance to cover yourself because you've obviously got it when you first purchased it. But the title insurance covers the lender in the event that the borrower is the fraudster. So you end up having to spend a couple $100 on title insurance to protect the lender.
The banks always win. I know you could do that privately. I understand the importance of that. But then I'm also paying legal fees. The bank always, and when we do a refinance, aren't we always paying legal fees to some bank lawyer?
Usually, you pay the bank's legal fees. Yeah.
Yeah. Some institutions do it internally though. Some institutions.
Yeah, no, they
on
do, but there's still a
refinance.
legal fee.
Yeah,
involved.
there's still legal fee. Yeah,
agreed.
they use some different companies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
it's like it's not a tie. It's a couple
I don't know,
$250
it's always-
or
Yeah,
something
it's
like
Still
still
that.
always
not-
just bothered me. I don't know. I just calculated how much money they're making. I'm like, I don't know, really? This too? But sure. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
but the title insurance. I mean, the main thing with the title insurance is the fraud protection. That is huge.
Can you
That
really
is
wear
huge.
that Apple Watch all day? Doesn't it drive you crazy with all the phone calls you're getting? You like it?
I hang it up all the time.
Oh, okay.
It's got a great feature. You can say can't talk right now.
Yeah. I can't talk right now.
But it is. I mean, to me, title insurance. That's the single most important function that it serves. It protects you for as long as you own your property.
I was completely mistaken on really the importance of it. Okay, so what else are you seeing around people with wills that they're making mistakes on a will?
Well, wills,
I actually have to redo mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the biggest mistake? Is it not updating it?
Well, updating sometimes it depends. Our wills are fairly general, so we don't specify if you own one property or 10 properties. If you say, listen, if I die, leave everything to my wife. If my wife and I die, we leave everything to our children.
But what if you have an extra kid? Because I think I only did mine when we had one child.
Doesn't make a difference.
Oh, no?
No,
Oh,
it doesn't.
great.
Because
Perfect.
we
Don't
say,
have to do it.
we say we leave the residue to our issue per stirpes, which means we leave it to our children. And should one of our children die before us and we have grandchildren, the share will go to our grandchildren. So it's generally good for a long time. The biggest change sometimes is, executors of the estate. I mean, if your kids are, 9 and 12 years old, you're not naming them as alternate executors. When they're 25, 26 years old, right? And the residue of the estate's going to them anyway, you're going to want to update your wills to reflect.
So if I have an old will that I don't know where it is right now and I need a new will and I come to you, does the new will just supersede the old will?
Absolutely. Okay. The new will simply says, I revoke all past wills.
Okay, so no one can show up with a copy of an old will.
No one can show up. And the other thing, if you're planning on getting married, if you have a will and then get married, that will is no longer valid unless the will specifically says, I'm making this will in contemplation of marriage. Huh. And now there's talk about that being changed, that they're saying that, why are we doing that? But right now, the way the law stands is if you have a will pre-marriage, unless the will says it's made in contemplation of marriage, that will is no longer married. Because the Family Law Act kicks in and different rights, different marital rights and property rights kick in once someone gets legally married.
You know what I learned the other day when we were talking on a couple of weeks ago on the weekend? You mentioned when it came to family rights and marital rights, you said that you don't need by default, if you get married, correct me if I'm wrong. So if you get married and someone's coming to the marriage with $200,000 worth of assets, someone's coming with $50,000. By default, the way things work is that you're able to then take out of that marriage, if you get divorced, that extra amount? Like if you were coming in with more assets, then I'm explaining this wrong, but the division of assets starts from the day you got married moving forward, not from before and what you're bringing into the marriage. Is that correct?
Correct, except if that money gets put into the matrimonial home.
Okay.
Right. Once you, so if I, so my, one of my parents dies, and both my parents die, and I inherit $100,000, and I put that $100,000 into a specific RSP.
Sure.
That money will be.
So when you're
my spouse can't touch that. But if I take that $100,000 and I pay down our mortgage with it, then that property, then I lose that $100,000.
Okay, so is this a different example of the same thing? We have several Rockstar members in their late 20s. Some of them own 3, 4, 5 properties. They start dating someone, they get married, they put some money into the matrimonial home. We get it, that's shared. But they have these other properties out there that were purchased well before and can be documented that they were purchased well before the marriage began. Do you need a prenup on that?
I would always recommend a prenup.
But do you? I know recommend, but do you really need one? Or
yeah, you do. You do.
I thought to Nick's point,
but
but
now
then it's open for interpretation. Without the prenup, it's open for interpretation.
Now it depends on because you start refinancing, you start putting you start selling properties, you start moving the money around a little bit. So I always recommend in that situation, get a prenuptial agreement, right? That way there's no confusion. You don't have to wait for somebody to interpret it.
Those are tough discussions.
Yeah, they
Thankfully, I came into my marriage with nothing.
Yeah.
Didn't have to have that.
Well, and it is a tough discussion, right? And tough discussion when parents are lending money to kids to buy a house. That's a tough discussion because if it's my son and I'm giving him a couple $100,000, well, if my son and daughter-in-law split up, that money was meant for him, not for her. So
so how do you?
So then can you say?
My brain doesn't think that way. If I was giving $100,000 and they split up, I figure my loss.
Not me. Not if I don't, especially if I don't like the person. Let's say I don't like the guy.
Yeah.
I have dollars. I don't like the guy. I'm like, look, I want you to live in a good place.
Maybe on the daughter with the guy example, I'd be more serious about that. You're right. That's a good point. Well, I was thinking my son's older. I was thinking about him marrying someone.
But if you've worked hard, you're able to accumulate a couple $100,000 to give to one of your children, right? And they stay married for 3 or 4 years and they split up. That money's meant for your family.
So can you make
children, not your.
So what do you do? That's covered.
So
what
we do? What we do is, we do a couple things. Either we can do a mortgage back to the parents for a couple $100,000.
So then it has to be paid back. So then when things get split up, that mortgage has to be paid back.
It's not
no interest payments.
No
or
interest. Got it. Repayable on demand.
Okay.
It just
balloon payment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, no, there's no payment, but at least my $200,000 is protected, whatever the amount is. That's one way. Or the second way is to do a prenuptial agreement, a marriage contract that says, hey, if we split up. When we sell our house,
contract. Well, lawyers have zero marketing skills.
Well,
here's the marriage contract. I would like to discuss with you today the marriage contract. Just tap your papers.
And that's the problem, right? You talk to a young couple and you say, I love you, but if we split up, I want this. And that's a very difficult discussion that individuals have. And
I feel like that one I could have more easily than going to my wife and saying, hey, by the way, here's like, you need to sign this before we get married. But going to my kids and say, look, you want the $200,000? Here's the deal.
Yeah, that's definitely
I feel like it's an easier conversation.
Absolutely. And that becomes a much easier sell to a spouse as well. And you say, hey, listen, my parents are lending us the money. And they just want a little bit of protection.
You make the parents the bad guy.
And at the end of the day, they stay a couple for the next, forever. Then they can that mortgage can be discharged. Okay. And we do have we'll do provisions in the will that says, hey, I've got a mortgage on my son's house, and if on my death, I'll forgive that mortgage. So there's ways of getting around it, but that is it becoming because the bank of mom and dad is becoming very prevalent in this economy, right? A lot of young kids, the reason they're able to buy properties is because their parents are helping them out.
What about the other? Remember your idea of the second will for something.
The secondary will
just
for
remind me about that.
corporations.
Yes.
So if you have a corporation, I know lots of rock star people have corporations. You can do a secondary will which bypasses probate, and you can
Because the
transfer
second will is covering your investments.
Yes, you do both wills at the same time. So you do a will that deals with your personal property, your home, money in the bank, and you do a second will that deals strictly with your corporate holdings. And you can say, this is what happens to my primary residence, etc. And this is what happens with my corporate holdings. And the corporate holdings, you can transfer those shares directly to your children without triggering any probate fee.
So if you don't have that second will, that's all that other stuff gets rolled into your estate, and you're paying probate on the whole thing.
Correct.
So a second will is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If you have some properties in a corporation or businesses. Or,
absolutely. Because, I mean, if your corporation's worth, say, $1 million, you're saving your family $15,000 in probate fee.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a substantial savings.
No-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
That's
a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer.
Okay. And then what else are you? What else do most people are? Is the will thing the biggest thing people kind of get lazy on and don't update? Where
the will thing, and what's really important is power of attorney.
Okay.
Right. That I think doesn't get enough. Exposure, because even for your principal residence, most individuals own their home as joint tenants, which means if either one dies, the other one becomes the owner by right of survivorship. You register a death certificate on title, and the surviving spouse, if they had to, they could sell the house fairly quickly. However, one of the individuals suffers a stroke and is in the hospital and unable to make decisions. Without a power of attorney, no one can deal with that property without going to a guardian trustee,
crazy.
right?
Okay.
So if you have a power of attorney and you go, wow, with my husband being in a coma, unable to work, we can't carry this house anymore. Well, if you have a power of attorney, you can sell if you had to.
And I feel like walking into a bank branch with a power of attorney, they're just going to look at me and say, get that piece of paper out of here.
No, not at all.
Really?
Not
I can
at all.
walk in and say, so let's say I have a bank account with, both must sign to withdraw money. Yeah. If I walk in with a power of attorney on Nick, because that's an account that we have, I'll be able to take the money out by just saying, hey, I have signing authority on Nick. Here's the power of attorney.
Absolutely.
You don't think it's going to take like 10 weeks for them to go up their chain of command?
No, not at all.
Really?
I've had people that, print the ones off internet and they got two buddies that witness it, etc. Yeah. You're going to get a lot more hesitation with a financial institution letting you do that. But if it's prepared by a lawyer in Ontario, properly witnessed, done properly, bank will not give any
some banks call you ever?
Oh yeah. I've had calls.
But
did you prepare this?
That power of attorney is good from the date that it's signed. It's not dependent on someone becoming, like the stroke example you used or something like that.
Absolutely. There's no restrictions to it. It's a general power.
See, that's the challenge, because there's a lot of people in business and in relationships that there's just a lot of people that will do unscrupulous things. And even if they're the best person initially, life circumstances happen and they change as a person, or in a marriage they start having an affair or something. Who knows? And then they can go do some crazy stuff. If they have power of attorney, yeah, that's the downside to that. What do you say to that, Jerry? You can't fight it. If they have power of attorney, you can't fight back after, right?
You know what? It's the best.
I don't trust anyone.
It's the best document you'll ever sign, and the most dangerous document you'll ever sign. In the wrong hands, to Nick's point, it's a extremely powerful document, because you're saying, hey, Nick, you can do whatever I can do. And that's pretty powerful.
So you get one signed with the other party, but then you just hide it from them so they don't really know about it, and they forget about it, and then you only use it when you need to.
Well, what I do...
figured it out.
What I do with...
Nick's a lawyer, Jerry. Hey, do you need help? Nick's looking for work.
Well, what I do with a lot of couples that come in to do wills, power of attorney and wills, and they want to name their children as backup. So, I mean... what happens if both of them are in the same car accident and they're both in a coma, right? You need backup. So I do a couple things. Number one, I get the parents to sign a direction to me as their lawyer that says, Jerry, as our lawyer, you need to make some inquiries. Why are our kids wanting our power of attorney? What's happened? Are they just coming to you trying to get a power of attorney because they want to sell our house without us knowing about it? So it puts a little bit of onus on me to try and reach out. So they said, my parents were in a car accident. They're both at Oakville General Hospital, and they're both in a coma. Well, I'll pick up the phone. I will reach out to the Oakville General Hospital and find out if what they're telling me is correct. You know, my parents are on vacation in Florida, and they just got a dynamite offer for the house, and they want to sell it. I'll pick up the phone and say, hey, John, hey, Sandy, you know, I understand you want to sell your house and your kids are going to say, yeah, absolutely. So I do take on a little bit of responsibility to make sure that the scenario that Nick's giving doesn't happen. But it is powerful. I've had situations where I had somebody come in and say, oh, my mother wants to give me her power of attorney. My father passed away. My mother wants to give me her power of attorney. I'll say, well, where's your siblings? Well, they're just around the corner. Well, why does she only want to name you as the power of attorney? Now, sometimes there's legitimate reasons. I've had situations where my brother lives in British Columbia, my sister lives in Nova Scotia, and, you know, they're not around to help out, and I'll, you know, call the siblings and say, hey, Nick, is it true that, you know...
Sure, yeah, just
right?
convenience factor, yeah.
Sometimes somebody says, I want to be named power of attorney for my mother, and my two siblings are around the corner. I've refused to do it. Because it's such a powerful document.
We've had an accountant before told us that, you know, they've had multiple times they've had people come in and say, well, yeah, they're just kind of like waiting for parents to pass away so they can get an inheritance. I always forget about that. Yeah. And it always freaked me out. I'm like, wow, so that they're
what
just
a way to live your life.
Yeah,
just waiting for my parents to pass away so that I can inherit.
Yeah,
something.
so people that are like in that kind of mindset, if they get the power of attorney, who knows what they might do, right?
Oh
you know what? Somebody's got a gambling problem. Somebody's got a drug problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's always
it's tough to live that way.
I'll pay off the debt on my next hit. Next time I make all this money, I'll pay off the mortgage on my mother's property or my father's property. And there have been elderly people that have lost their properties because children have, with power of attorney, you know, racked up. Now, the good news
if there's life insurance policies involved, you
yes,
could probably tap into life insurance policies. Oh my God.
Now, the good news is that because there's been so much shenanigans going on with power of attorneys, title insurance companies and banks are being extra careful if somebody's trying to sell a property pursuant to a power of attorney or refinance. So again, if you just go and get one off the internet, have your parents sign it, and your two buddies are the witnesses, that's not going to fly, right? If you have it done properly with a lawyer, I've had calls from a bank say, hey, did you prepare the power of attorney? Do you know what's going on? Yes, I did. You know, the mother was here. She was looking at selling, but unfortunately she's unable to sign because she's in a nursing home or something. But, you know, all of the proceeds are being put into the mother's bank account, and we're just doing it for purposes of convenience.
I think I've purchased some of those fill in the blank. Like, this is when bookstores used to sell racks of legal forms. Yeah. And it was like you could buy like an incorporation package or
I bought some. And you know what? The first times I bought them, they came on a floppy disk. Oh, a hard disk. Sorry, not a floppy disk, a hard disk, the small ones. But I think I bought it, and I literally think it came on a disk. I guess it must have been 25 years ago. Oh. We used discs back then, I think, still.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm bought.
I'm talking about, I remember them being printed out paper at the bookstore.
But
when you said hard disk, I just remember going to school one day, and it was a transition happening from the floppy disk to the hard disk, and showing somebody a hard disk, and they were saying, what is that? Yeah. Like, that's the state of technology.
How much data do those things hold?
I wonder how like half of one Word document.
That's like you guys are too young. The VHS, the big fat VHS.
I remember the Beta VHS wars. Our Italian neighbor across the street told me Beta. You know who I'm talking about? Beta's gonna win. Beta's gonna win. We bought VHS. I remember going back to like, hey, Rocky, remember VHS?
But Beta was better. Beta was better.
Another Beta lover.
Well, what was the other one? Blu-ray versus the other DVD something.
Wasn't it just a regular DVD versus
something?
Blu-ray
there
or
was
something?
Two different competing standards there too, and then the Blu-ray ended up winning that one.
Yeah, I forgot.
And now no one cares because you just stream everything.
I remember saving up for my DVD player. Carol and I saved up. Our first DVD player was like $1,100.
Crazy.
$1,100.
You know, DVD players now, like a decent one's like $99. Like a good one, a Blu-ray player's like $99. I think that's an expensive one.
But the freaky part is that I just said we saved.
Yeah.
Who even saves money anymore? Like, that seems like a foreign concept right now.
I remember my first car we had the big slot, and we would carry around these big
8 tracks.
8 tracks. and
Oh
we'd pop
yeah,
them
our
in.
parents had Tom Jones, Elvis Presley. Who were the YMCA guys? YMCA, remember that?
Don't sing it. You can. We can answer without you
On
singing.
the last
The
podcast, I
Village
tried to
People.
sing a
Isn't
little
it the
bit too.
Village-
Yeah,
Village People?
We had all
Village-
the.
yeah.
It was like macho,
yeah.
man. Remember that? Oh my god! I remember because we would find these things. We'd turn up the sound system in our parents' basement because he had our father in our basement built a dance floor that was like 9
big,
feet
yeah,
wide by like 15 feet long, all parquet flooring with lights above it and,
And
a
a
big
bar-
bar
a
at the
long
end.
bar on one
so
side,
they would
yeah.
have dance parties.
Oh, wow.
It was a walkout basement, and they would play these 8 tracks, and the sound system was built into the ceiling. He went all out. It was really weird.
yeah.
And just some Saturday afternoon as a kid, you're bored. You just turn it up. You throw in these 8 tracks, and you hear like Elvis Presley just going at it over the thing. She had flashbacks to our mom pling Whitney Houston. Children are our future.
Let's not
You're gonna sing that?
Let's not criticize the Beatles or the Elvis Presley.
No.
My
Yeah.
generation. That's my generation.
Yeah.
No, I can still listen to Elvis. Elvis is good. I don't listen to much Beatles, but when I hear an Elvis song, like Elvis is Elvis,
I don't mind
man. I don't
Beatles.
know.
Yeah, Beatles. Yeah.
Listen, I just did a soundtrack finally for myself, and I got like 20 songs from Frank Sinatra and my kid.
Yeah.
Hey, listen,
I like Frank Sinatra
yeah,
as
he's
well.
good
Yeah,
voice.
Rat Pack. The whole Rat
You know
Pack,
who blew me away? I went on a concert. My brother, another Italian guy, brother-in-law, dragged me to a Michael Bublé concert. I went kicking and screaming, Jerry. I don't want to go see this guy Bublé. What a waste of my time. I was probably the worst person to go with it. With our, Carol went, my wife, my sister-in-law. He was amazing. It was amazing. It was at the Air Canada Center.
He's got a fabulous
And he's
voice.
just a natural entertainer.
Yeah.
A fabulous voice and a great entertainer. I can't believe I'm admitting it, but Michael Bublé was amazing. Where were we talking about right there? we were talking. What else? Okay,
power
insurance.
of attorney. We were talking about
Yeah,
power
but I
of
want to ask
attorney
you.
world.
So let's move on to insurance. Insurance. If someone's closing on a rental property now, is $2 million worth of insurance still a good? That's the
a minimum. That's a minimum.
So you're recommending people get more?
Depending on the
Why?
cost.
Because you're seeing some lawsuits or some cases go above $2 million judgments.
You could why expose yourself to that, right?
Okay, so what amount? What amount
I
do you
would
really
probably
like?
try to go to 5.
Really?
Yeah, I tried to go to 5 million. But you got nothing to worry about.
I get. So you're talking extreme, so like a fire where lives are lost and
Well,
there's
it's not even
negligence proven. Because why? Like what?
But believe it or not, it's not lives lost that bring it up. Right?
Oh, it's if it's not lost and they survive for a period of time.
Some 22-year-old kid in a student rental
Jesus
becomes,
Christ.
paralyzed for the rest of his life, and it's your fault, right? The cost of caring for that's where the numbers get up, and even motor vehicle accidents.
So you're telling people $5 million?
Well, now if the cost is the difference is crazy, then I would rethink.
Okay.
But if the cost is not
Marginal,
I bump it to $5 million all day long, because it's like I said, even a motor vehicle accident, it's not if someone dies, if someone survives. And
what about
is
these umbrella
paralyzed.
policies that cover, one policy covering multiple things? Do you like those kinds of insurance policies?
I think it's because it is per incident, so it's not total.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if 5 people are injured in the house, the $5 million covers each person. It's not
Does it?
Yeah, so it's not a global. That's my
We
understanding.
would have to check, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it covers
Okay.
each individual.
So speak to your insurance representative on that.
That's really important to know
Okay.
because insurance is a big thing nowadays.
Jeez, I feel like you've seen a lot when you look at us and say insurance is a big thing nowadays. Okay, so we covered Planning Act, will, prenups, the probate, the second will, the power of attorney, the insurance.
Do you ever get sick of dealing? Like you must deal with some circumstances you're just not happy with, or you don't even want to get involved in. Like it's a really just crappy situation. Like
Or you're just dealing with crappy people.
Do you just get tired of it sometimes?
Well, I'm finding nowadays, to be honest with you, my practice, I negotiate extensions on closing dates constantly. That's being our biggest thing is,
That's because the banks are taking too long.
Well, everybody's taking too long. The brokers are behind because they're, appraisers are taking longer than they normally would. Banks are taking longer. And I'm saying to everybody, agents, please don't do a 30-day closing because it's difficult for people to get their financing in place and close a transaction in 30 days. Those days are gone.
We used to be able to do an urgent 2-week closing.
2 weeks.
No, you know what? Those days are gone. And when that happens, right? I always call the agent and say, guys, you got to give everybody, not so much at my end. It's not so much at my end that's taking the delay, because, we're able to get going. Years ago, a bank would give you instructions even if it wasn't broker complete. So, you get a package that's broker complete. Butler's office has got to put in the notice of assessment, the employment letter, all of that. Got to get the appraisal. Years ago, the bank would send us instructions even if the file was not broker complete. It's completed a day before closing. We've got everything ready, client signed, ready to go. Nowadays, an institution is not sending out instructions unless their package is complete from the broker. Unfortunately for the broker, they're having trouble getting like an appraisal. One of the things is you got to hand in an appraisal. The appraiser says, "Hey, sorry, I can't do this for the next 2 or 3 weeks." So the package isn't getting finished by the broker. We're getting instructions a day or two before closing. Sometimes we're getting instructions the morning of closing to put the package together. And, we're getting clients that are getting frustrated. They're going, well, what's going on? Well, guys, I can't really
What kind of crappy lawyers are we dealing with here?
Well, I can't put the package together unless I get
everything.
your mortgage instructions. And then the bank, some banks say, well, we need 5 days from the time you get the instructions to fund it, because you've got to submit all the so it's so now all of a sudden you're calling
that's what we've always liked about you, Jerry, how great you are at handling all the little details that can go wrong on a real estate closing. What happens with small claims court? Small claims court, the minimum has gone up to, is it $25,000 now?
No, I think it's 35.
35.
I think it's
35.
35.
Holy smokes. I feel like I remembered it at 10.
Oh, it was 10. Yeah,
I feel like it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So it's $35,000.
$35,000.
Are you seeing a backlog at small claims? Is small claims a division of the Superior Court of Ontario?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And
Are you
there's
seeing a
huge backlog?
There is.
Huge backlog. Yeah. We're waiting for.
So you would tell anybody taking anyone to small claims now just to mediate it out?
Try to. I mean, at one point, small claims court was great because you'd put your claim in. They'd have what's called a settlement conference. You'd be able to sit there in front of a judge, and he would try his best to try and hammer out a solution for both parties. As long as both parties give a little bit, they usually would arrive at a solution. The problem is it's taking so long to even get to the settlement conference because of the backlog in small claims court.
What is so long? How long is it taking?
I've got one right now. I think we're 7 or 8 months still waiting for a settlement.
Date?
Yeah,
you don't have a date.
We don't even have a date yet.
We went to one of those settlement conferences. Remember, and the judge looked at the guy and he was like, "Is this your signature?" And the guy was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you understand English?" "Yes." "Did you read this document before you signed it?" He's like, "Yes." He goes, "I strongly advise you don't continue this." Whatever he said.
It was a great judge, because we were thinking, oh my gosh.
And that's and that's the beauty of small claims court. They have that sort of, it's almost like a mediation where the judge will, now, if either party doesn't agree with what the judge is saying, it'll proceed to a trial. But generally, a judge is sitting there going, "Come on, throw in a couple bucks. You shave off a couple bucks. Everybody.
Sure, let's move on and get on with our lives.
And get over.
How are they going to get through this backlog, Jerry?
I don't know how they're going to do it.
Are they hiring more judges?
Well,
are you going to become a judge one day?
No, I'm too old to be a judge. I'm 65 years old.
You're looking good, man. You're looking good, Jerry. You're looking good.
Yeah.
You're looking good. No, but aren't judges like your age?
No, judges are younger. Judges,
are they?
Oh, yeah, judges, because it's mandatory retirement at 75.
Oh,
judges
well, you got 10 years. I feel like you would be a good judge. No, because you mediate things out really well. I mean, I've seen you do it. You do a great job at that.
Well, I like negotiating. That's my strength. I like negotiating solutions.
Yeah, we've seen real estate deals with other lawyers blow up into huge problems that don't necessarily need to be a huge problem. And the stuff that's gone through you've always been able to mediate your way through it. I've always respected that about you.
What I respect about you is I've been in your office before, and you'll just pick up the phone and call them, which is something that I feel like I would do, or I would want to do. But in those situations, it's better just to let someone like you handle it. And whereas some lawyers will just be like, well, they'll send you the letter, the written letter, bad tone, very formal tone. The real sounds like a jerk. And you're like, what the hell? What's wrong with this guy? Pick up the phone. Let's talk. Let's hash something out and let's move on.
You've done that always. Yeah.
That's always
These
been
legal
my
letters
philosophy.
that go back and forth.
It doesn't do anything because you're asking one thing, comes back, pick up the phone.
It takes a few weeks. You get a response. It's like, what are we doing here?
And if you can talk to other lawyers, say, look, you know what, I'm willing to do this if your guy's willing to do that. Let's, each of us talk to our clients.
And in your community, I'm sure you know which lawyers are willing to talk and not talk.
Absolutely. And what drives me crazy is, the lawyers that you can't get a hold of. You call and all you're talking to is their clerk, and you're going, you know what? I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the person who's, they're not around. They're not around. And those are the ones that's difficult to negotiate with. Because if you have a lawyer on the other side, generally you're going to come up with a solution. And as long as, my philosophy has always been, I got a buyer that wants to buy. You got a seller that wants to sell. Let's make it work. Right? That's generally what, and if you take that approach, you can resolve it.
Are you seeing any changes with technology in the law field where people are going to start using more virtual lawyers? Is the law, is the law changing? The industry changing where people
a little
are,
bit, yeah,
yeah.
a little bit.
To me, I like having a relationship with someone like yourself, Jerry, because if things can go wrong, you can talk to you, you can go to your office. Like these are very important things to me. With some of these virtual lawyer, does a client of those kinds of things lose some of that or not?
Well, I always say, when clients call me and we're talking about, our process and what's happening, right? One of the things I always say to them, guys, you can reach out to me. Now, it might take me a day or two, depending on how busy I am, but you can reach out to me and I will get back to you. And, I'm the one handling your file. Lots of law firms, basically, their clerks do everything. They sign the client up. They deal with the client. I've had clients walk in and say, I've never even met my former lawyer. Never talked to my former lawyer.
We've seen situations like that.
Yeah, and
what's the lawyer doing in that case?
Well,
I don't understand. Just bigger jobs.
Well, they're doing nothing. Maybe they're doing litigation.
Maybe they're on the golf course.
Yeah, maybe they're on the golf course. Maybe they're on a beach. They're
Oh, jeez.
You lawyers are golfing with the real estate agents.
That's
what
right.
happens.
Oh God, Nick and I don't golf. We don't golf. Don't call us agents. We don't know what we are.
Okay.
We don't know what we are, Jerry.
But that's I'm to me. And in fact, I had a call this morning from a client, and we were talking, and I said, look, if we build a relationship and you're negotiating and, either your agent or yourself needs some assistance in the wording of a clause in the agreement because it's a unique piece of property or there's tenants involved and you want, just give me a call.
We've always appreciated that about you, for really. I mean, that has been amazing.
And that's always important, right? Even
we tell everyone investor, there's some people you just want professional relationships with, and you want to pay them their fees because you want these people to pick up your phone call when you call. I just have this pet peeve of when people kind of shop around fees on professionals, like accountants and lawyers specifically, to save $50 on a transaction, and then the same people will get upset when they don't get their call returned in under 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing here?
Exactly.
So
and that's the worth. I mean, that's the worth of the team you're working with, right? Yeah. And that is one of the strong things that the Rockstar has. It has a good network of people that it's
not perfect. Not perfect. But
nobody's perfect. But like if there's a problem with the mortgage, you can pick up the phone and get a hold of the mortgage broker. You can get a hold of the agent because there's a problem, or the accountant as to how to, and that's priceless. That's invaluable when you're trying
Jerry.
to do
Jerry's slipping in the little
the plug,
the promo plug there.
Yeah,
very smooth. You are a lawyer, Jerry. We got it. Jerry, that's great. We covered everything I wanted to cover. That was fantastic. Anything else on your mind?
I'm good.
Yeah, thanks for telling me the new way to get to Blue Mountain. You and Nick have a different route. No, I'm really excited to go that way to Blue Mountain because I was always going the other way. Now I'm excited to try Winston Churchill all the way up.
Our buddy takes credit for that because he's the one that told me.
Who, Kevin?
Kevin Talk.
Kevin Talk made it on the podcast.
The mayor.
Yeah, if anyone finds their way up to Blue Mountain, just ask around for a gentleman by the name of Kevin Talk, and you will soon run into him. Yeah, he's a longtime Rockstar client, long-term client of Jerry Gatto.
Last time we were up there, we were driving through the subdivision where he has a couple properties, and he's walking down the sidewalk with a red Solo cup full with some drink, and he's just walking.
And
we're
he
like,
knew
of course.
Everybody. Yeah. He did. You know? He bought another property up there. He flyered the area. And the sales rep selling the pre-construction thing, I think they weren't kind of fully happy with that. They reached out to him and said, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they kind of got him a pre-construction one on the next phase.
Yeah.
But he's on the rampage up there.
If you can't find one, just piss off the rep so that you can.
I hear the next municipal election, he's running for office up there.
You want to know Kevin. Jerry, you're up there too. I always tell everyone, Jerry's the Don of the area. Kevin's the mayor. That's the combination.
There's a number of investors that we know that have decided to buy places up there for themselves, for personal use. It's like, and you know a number of them too. Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow, we've never spent really time up there, but by the time we get the place and we kind of spend some time up there, there's going to be a number of people that we
developments
know.
Between Rockstar members and some of the Croatian community that we know, and Jerry, yourself, and some other people that we know, we're like, holy smokes.
There's a lot of
people we know up there.
That's
either going to be a
place.
great thing or it's going to be a terrible thing. We haven't figured that out yet.
It is.
Or it's going to be a horrible thing for the neighbors.
Exactly.
We're doing the pig roast at our place. We're doing the pig roast at our place.
You'll see the population of Blue Mountain dwindling.
Yeah. What happened to the resale values here? All these guys.
Oh, that's perfect. If we can dwindle population, we're happy about that. Yeah.
Oh, always a pleasure, Jerry. What's the URL? How is the best way to contact you if someone doesn't know us or you? Is
contact
it the website?
me on my my website is Gatto Law. My email is ggatto@gattolaw.ca. That's GGATTO @gattolaw.ca. Send me a quick email and I'll get back to you.
Appreciate it, Jerry. Thank you.
Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.